This video is going to serve as a tutorial for the Utility Shed Design Guide Part 3. So this is the first part in Part 3 videos to finish out our Utility Shed Design for CEA core training prerequisites. So as we take a look, last video, so similar to what we had, we did have, I did do the optional components of adding furniture and adding site plan components. We're going to see that kind of play in. Part 3 all deals with creating drawings and being able to document our design. So when we go and take a look at our drawing itself, one thing that I'll end up showing you is that it is going to mess with our drawing that we did before. So I'm going to double click on the 3D view, and I'm going to bring up the visibility graphics window, which can be found by clicking edit visibility graphics on the properties palette. You could also type VG on your keyboard. It's a keyboard shortcut. And we're going to look at taking away some of the model elements, sort of one of the model categories. The big one that shows up is we need to take away the topography. So if I uncheck topography and if I hit apply, you're going to see that it's going to disappear. So if you kind of see that in the background, you're going to see that disappear. So we're going to remove some of the items that we've seen there. So for example, we really want to take away planting. So that's going to involve our trees. So you're going to see those trees are going to go away. And then the van was under entourage. So these names are corresponding to what you're seeing in the Imperial Library. So you'll see site went away, topography went away. So now we're back to just having the 3D view of the shed design, which is what we want. I'm going to right click and deactivate the view. You may have to reposition your view label, but that's okay. The other thing is when you start taking a look at some of this, again, you're going to see here, I'm going to double click on the elevation view, same scenario. VV also will bring up when you use the keyboard shortcut VV. You will also see that. I'm going to have to take off the entourage and say apply. Then that way we're not seeing any of those components in that east elevation view. On the south elevation, you're seeing the trees in the background. Again, we want to isolate those, so we're just kind of repeating this same process of we're going to take away the planting and say okay. Now we're just straight down to there. You're going to see also topo surface is going to be active. They're going to see a line down there. We don't really want to see that. So I'm going to bring up visibility graphics again. I may need to go back. I know I'm going to have to go back to my east elevation to take that away. But there we go. So deactivate that view, activate this one, use my keyboard shortcut to bring up visibility graphics, and then uncheck the topography. So then that way that's not showing up there. Okay, some of the other things that we may do, right click and deactivate the view, is we're really not concerned. We really just want a floor plan. We really don't want to show the furniture. So I'm going to double click to activate the view. Again, VG or VV will bring up visibility graphics. Some of the components here are going to be things like furniture. And if I hit apply, all that stuff should go away. So keeping doors and windows are fine. You can also do that, but getting rid of the furniture, and I usually have my students go through and do the same thing. So utilizing that visibility graphics window is very important because when you're you don't want to delete anything from your model, you just want to hide it. And that's what the visibility graphics does for us when you do that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to our floor plan. So as I start back, so just to kind of note that as we were doing that from the previous videos, we are going to look at step 16, which is on page 2 of the part 3 utility shed design guide. And under the view tab, we're going to switch over here. You're going to see there's a section view. So our section view ends up being a cutaway view that's going to show us the interior of some different components that we end up having. So the one thing they note is that we want to see the slope of the roof when we go through the cut plane, and remember our edges. So one thing that we're going to see is I'm going to click on section, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a section view, and maybe I start on the inside and move to the outside. Now, in this view, the pointing of the arrow indicates the view in which it looks at, and then the box is indicating how much that you're seeing inside that section view. So if I look down here now, I've got actually, and I can change this to a wall section type. So, and that's exactly what I want to do with this selected. If I look in my properties, or excuse me, my project browser, you're going to see in sections, you have section 1. So if I go through and double click on section 1, this is the kind of view that I want to see. Um, Not really, it's, opposite side from what we want to see as shown in the document, but this is the kind of view that we're wanting to see as we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click, I'm going to say delete to get rid of that section. You'll notice that line goes away, that section view indicator does. And then I'm going to probably do this. I'm going to stay away from crossing through a window as I do so. And I'm going to go through here. And as you take a look, when we look at our section view, again, while I got this selected, I want to change this to a wall section and double click on section 1. So here you're going to see that, I got topo surface, which is going to show the cutting plane material. This is actually looking pretty good for what we're kind of looking for, and as far as what we see from the document. I'm going to expand the crop region a little bit on the sides, but I'm going to bring it down on the top and maybe a little bit on the bottom, just a little bit. So we don't need to see as much of the ground as what we think. May want to bring it out just a little bit more just to give enough room on the sides. Okay, so one thing that we're going to take a look at is we're going to end up changing a few different properties. And here's the other thing too, is while we're in our section view, we got a new view. I'm going to edit the visibility graphics. I do want to take away the furniture. So the furniture, since we're not doing anything, furniture's not something that we absolutely need to detail. We're focusing on the details of the wall. We don't need the furniture in there. Could go through and get in the way of some of the detailing that we need to describe for this view. Okay, one thing I'll do is we do need to change the scale to a 1/2 inch equals a foot, as noted, and then the detail level right now by default is always set to coarse, and we want to change that down to fine. So when you go to fine, you'll notice you're going to be able to see layers in your wall type. Now the only issue is sometimes, as you'll see, is you get these really bold lines. So usually what I like to do is I like to thin the lines in this view. So there's a little shortcut in your quick access toolbar up here to thin lines. You can also see that it's right here under the graphics panel as well. So when you click that, that bolded edge will go away, and in that way you're going to be able to see all that particular case. All right. Now you're going to see I keep kind of getting a highlight of this wall in there. So I'm going to go back to my floor plan. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this in so then that way we're not seeing anything with that window. If I go back to my section, or I can also double click on the arrow that I end up having. Or I can right click and say go to view, I should say. Now when I hover over the wall, you'll notice I'm not getting that window to show up there as well. And I'm seeing a lot more of the detailing that's supposed to be there. Okay, so you're going to be able to see those different things. I'm going to verify this wall, yep, is set up correctly, so that way we're good there. All right, so section 1. Here's one thing that we're going to take a look at. It says we're going to select one of the shed walls with siding. So this one actually, if I select it, this is one of the shed walls with siding as noted by the type selector. So we are going to edit the type. We are going to then, since this is a wall we created earlier in this project, we're going to be able to edit it. So I'm going to hit edit structure. Right now we're going to end up changing that, we're going to go to a instead of a metal stud layer in our structure, we're going to go to a softwood lumber. So which would be very similar to, there we go. We can choose that from the materials, and then we're going to go into a 2x4 framed, which is actually 3.5 inches in thickness. So nominal versus actual size of material. They also want us to change the plywood sheathing layer to a 1/2 inch thick. So very common for a lot of shed designs and everything as such. So we may go through when we say OK, we're probably going to get an error message, very similar to how we did in a previous video when we changed walls. When we say OK, it may say that we can't keep constraints satisfied. And mine didn't, but if it does, you can always say remove constraints. So now the only issue is, since we changed the thickness, this is what happened. So now our entire width of our building is not near as wide as what it was. Again, if I select this wall, I can go through and change 12. That's going to put it out, and that allows me to keep that measurement. Now, the other thing too is our floor is locked in from our previous video. I locked it so that way it was aligned, constantly aligned with the exterior wall. So we don't have to worry about changing anything with our floor because it's always there. All right, so let's go back to our section view. When we take a look, we're going to select the floor, and it says we're going to perform the necessary actions to duplicate and edit the floor to have a single 6-inch layer of concrete. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to Edit Type. I am actually going to change this type real quick. I'm going to find a very similar type. We could actually probably just go to a generic 12-inch. That's probably going to help us out a lot. Edit our type, duplicate, and then we will call this shed floor 6 inches. And probably need to note that there's concrete. Shed floor, concrete 6 inches. We'll say OK. I'm going to edit the structure. There's only one layer in here, and I'm going to change the material, which is not set, and I'm going to go ahead and change that to a cast in place concrete gray. Say OK, and the thickness, we'll drop that down to 6 inches. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to say OK. Now, the only thing is now we're going to end up seeing that our floor, since we changed the thickness, we went from a 10 3/4 inch thick floor, which is where we set our elevation for our topo surface, and now we're at 6, so it looks like our shed is floating at this point, but that's okay. So we're going to go through and we're going to make some changes. I'm going to double click on the floor. The floor looks good, and as well as the walls, so the boundaries are going to stay just like where they were. No issues with walls. If I take a look at the 3D view, everything's good there. What we may want to do is go VV to bring back visibility graphics. Let's go ahead and turn on our topography again. So I'm going to scroll down to topography, check it, and say OK. When I do that, I can select it, edit the surface, again select my 4 corners, and you're going to see here's that negative 10 3/4 inch. Now let's just back that down to 6 inches. Click off of it, hit the green check mark. Everything now should be looking good. Now I will want to go through and turn this back off for our 3D view and say OK. And then that way we just have our shed building, because otherwise it's going to show back up on our sheets. So there's what that looks like. Let's go back to the section view. So now everything looks good. It looks like it's resting on the ground as it normally should be. So that's really kind of what we look at. And that's kind of going to be where we go ahead and stop for this video. In the next video, we'll take a look at labeling the components in the section view and starting to look at placing that on the drawing.